In the small town of Winbrook, Hank Thompson, farmer on the brink of bankruptcy, watches his last hopes wither along with his devastated crops. When he decides to donate his final harvest to a mysterious wandering family, the Carters, Hank has no idea that this simple act of kindness will change his life forever. As the bond between Hank and the Carters grows stronger, long-buried secrets begin to surface, revealing surprising connections between their families. Amidst economic struggles and an imminent threat that could destroy everything they hold dear, Hank and the Winbrook community must come together to protect their roots. But who are the Carters, really? And what secrets do they hold that could change the fate of everyone involved? This is a story of overcoming adversity, reconciliation, and the search for new purpose, where the past and present intertwine in unexpected ways, leading to an ending that promises to renew hope in all who hear it. I stood at the edge of my field, the sun a fading ember in the sky, casting a melancholic glow over the barren land that had once thrived with life. The earth, cracked and dry, mirrored the desolation in my heart. I ran my fingers through the coarse, parched soil, a futile gesture that only deepened my despair. Each day felt heavier than the last, burdened with the weight of unpaid bills and the relentless gnawing fear of failure. My crops had withered, and with them, my dreams of a bountiful harvest that could save my family farm from the brink of ruin. Another day, another disappointment, I muttered to myself, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. The wind whispered through the empty rows, mocking my hopes. I had poured every ounce of sweat into this land, but it seemed the more I fought, the more it slipped through my fingers. As I trudged along the remnants of what used to be my livelihood, I caught sight of movement by the roadside. A family, disheveled and weary, was setting up a makeshift camp. The sight of them struck a chord deep within me. I had seen hardship before, but this felt different. There was a rawness to their struggle, a desperation that resonated with my own plight. I approached cautiously, my heart racing. "Hey there," I called out, my voice rough from disuse. "Need any help?" A woman turned to me, her eyes wide with surprise. "Oh, we're just trying to get by," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Ellen, and this is my family." She gestured to the two children beside her, their faces smudged with dirt, but bright with curiosity. "I'm Hank," I said, forcing a smile despite the heaviness in my chest. "What brings you here?" Ellen glanced down, her hands fidgeting with the frayed edges of her shirt. "We've been traveling for weeks, lost everything back home, just trying to find a place to start over." The words hit me hard. I could see the struggle etched into her features, the exhaustion in her movements. "I know what that feels like," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "This farm, it's all I've got left, and it's slipping away." Silence hung between us, thick with understanding. Then an impulsive thought struck me. "Listen, I have some vegetables left from my last harvest. They're not much, but I'd like to share them with you." Ellen's eyes widened, and I caught a glimpse of hope flickering within them. "You would do that for us?" she asked, disbelief coloring her tone. "Of course," I replied, my heart swelling with a strange warmth. "Can't eat them all by myself anyway." As I turned to head back to my shed, I felt her gaze on me. There was something in the way she looked at me, a mixture of gratitude and something else? Curiosity, perhaps? I shook off the feeling, focusing instead on the task at hand. I gathered what I could find: a few tomatoes, some wilting greens, and a handful of potatoes. When I returned, the kids were peeking from behind Ellen, their eyes wide with wonder. "Wow, are those for us?" one of them exclaimed, his voice filled with innocence. "Yep," I replied, kneeling down to their level. "Just think of it as a little gift. I hope it helps you." Ellen stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Thank you, Hank. You have no idea how much this means to us. We were beginning to think we'd have to go without a meal tonight." I shrugged, feeling a mix of pride and humility. "It's just food, but I hope it brings you some comfort." As they took the supplies, I felt a spark of something I hadn't experienced in a long while. Hope. Maybe this small act of kindness could lead to something more. But as I watched them huddle together, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives were intertwined in ways I couldn't yet understand. I felt it in my bones. This was just the beginning, and the road ahead would reveal secrets that had long been buried. As I stood by the window, the fading sunlight cast long shadows over the barren fields, haunting reminder of my dwindling hopes. The once thriving crops that had defined my life now lay in desolation, much like my spirit. I clenched my fists, trying to push away the despair that threatened to consume me. It was then that I noticed movement at the edge of the road. A family had set up camp, their modest tent swaying gently in the evening breeze. Curiosity piqued. I stepped outside, a bunch of dry grass beneath my boots, echoing my own fragility. As I approached, I could see them more clearly. A woman with kind eyes, a teenage girl with vibrant red hair, and a boy, perhaps my son's age, who looked more defiant than anything else. They were the Carters, a family I had only heard whispers about. Drifters searching for something they had lost, just like me. "Hey there," I called out, my voice breaking the silence that enveloped us. They all turned to me, their expressions a mix of surprise and caution. The woman stepped forward, her face softening in the glow of the setting sun. "Hello," I replied, her voice warm yet weary. "I'm Ellen. We're just passing through." I swallowed hard, feeling an inexplicable urge to reach out to them. I can't offer much, but I have some leftover produce from my last harvest. It's not much, but it's fresh." Ellen's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really? That would mean so much to us. Thank you." As I walked back to my house to gather what little I had, I felt an unfamiliar flutter in my chest. Maybe this act of kindness could pull me from the depths of despair. I returned, arms laden with wilted vegetables and a few meager fruits. The girl, Sarah, approached me, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice a mere whisper. "It's more than we've had in days." Suddenly, Jake, the boy with the rebellious attitude, chimed in. "Why don't you just sell your land and move on? Seems like that would solve your problems." His tone was sharp, and I felt a flash of irritation. "Easy for you to say," I shot back, meeting his gaze. "You don't know what it's like to fight for something you believe in." "Believe in? What's left to believe in when everything's gone?" Jake scoffed, crossing his arms defiantly. "Enough, Jake," Ellen interjected, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. "We're not here to judge, we're just grateful for Hank's generosity." I watched as she turned to me, her expression changing. "It's just tough out here. We've been struggling for a while. Your kindness is a light in a very dark time." Her words struck a chord deep within me, and I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble. "I know what it's like to feel hopeless," I admitted, my voice low. "Sometimes a little help can go a long way." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow around us, I felt a shift. The air seemed to vibrate with unspoken understanding, connection that transcended our circumstance. I watched as Sarah knelt beside the wilted vegetables, her fingers gently brushing over them. Can we try to plant some of these?" she asked, her face lighting up with excitement. "I know it's late in the season, but maybe we can make something grow." I hesitated, then a spark ignited within me. "You know, I've always believed that where there's a will, there's a way." Jake rolled his eyes, but I could see a flicker of interest behind his defiance. "What do you know about planting? Look at your field." "More than you think," I replied, a smile creeping onto my face. "Let's see what we can do together. It might just be what we all need." Ellen smiled at me, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and gratitude. "We'd like that. Thank you, Hank." As we stood there under the fading light, I realized that this was no longer just about my crumbling farm. It was about something much bigger. We were in this together now. Perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a way to cultivate not only the land, but our spirits as well. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the remnants of my once thriving farm, I found myself sitting at the old wooden table in my kitchen. Half-eaten meal forgotten in front of me. The air was thick with the scent of fading hope, wilted dreams. Ellen Carter had joined us for dinner, her presence a strange comfort amidst the turmoil that enveloped my life. As I absent-mindedly pushed my food around my plate, I couldn't shake the feeling that something profound was simmering just beneath the surface. "Do you believe in the stories our families tell?" Ellen asked, her voice breaking the silence that had settled like dust around us. Her eyes, a deep shade of green, glistened with a mixture of curiosity and something more, perhaps nostalgia. "I used to," I replied, my voice low. My grandfather had a way of weaving tales that made the past feel alive. Stories of our land, our people. But now, it all feels like a distant memory. I glanced at the empty fields outside, where the remnants of my crops stood like ghosts of what once was. Jake, her son, sat opposite me, tapping his fingers on the table in an impatient rhythm. "You know, there are legends about this place," he interjected, his tone challenging. "About how the farmers here were once bound by more than just the land. They shared secrets, traditions. They were a community." Ellen shot him a look that spoke volumes, a mix of warning and sadness. "Jake, be careful. Those stories can be heavy with meaning," cautioned. Her words hung in the air. Thick, unspoken history. "Like what?" I asked, leaning forward, intrigued despite myself. "What do you know?" Jake shrugged, flicker of defiance in his eyes. "Just things I heard. Old tales about friendships torn apart and lands lost to greed. They say this land was once a sanctuary for families who cared for each other, but then something changed." Ellen sighed, her gaze dropping to her hand. "It's true. There are stories we carry that can bind us or break us," she murmured. "My family, we lost so much because of misunderstandings and betrayals, but I never thought those stories would intertwine with yours." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean by that?" I pressed, my heart racing as the pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know existed began to shift in my mind. Ellen hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. "There are legends about our families, about how your grandfather and mine were once friends, united by the land until they weren't." Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, and something in her tone made me think that she knew more than she was letting on. "Friends?" I echoed, feeling the weight of those words settle heavily in the room. "What happened?" "Farming can turn friends into enemies," Jake replied, a hint of bitterness in his voice. "You know how it is. When the land suffers, so do the people. And sometimes, desperation leads to choices that can tear families apart." Ellen nodded, expression somber. "We lost our land because of a dispute that spiraled out of control. I've heard whispers that it was your grandfather who played a part in that. It's all tangled up in time. Pain remains." I swallowed hard, the realization hitting me like a cold wave. So our families were connected by more than just geography. We share a history of loss and betrayal. "Exactly," Ellen said softly, "but it doesn't have to remain that way. We can choose to rewrite the narrative. We can choose to heal." As I processed her words, something within me began to shift. I had been so consumed by my own struggles that I hadn't considered the weight of history that burdened both of our families. Perhaps there was a chance for reconciliation, a possibility to forge a new path that acknowledged the past, but didn't let it dictate our future. "Let's not let the past define us," I said, my voice steadier now. "Maybe we can find a way to honor our family's histories together." Ellen looked up, her eyes brightening with a flicker of hope. "I'd like that. We can start by sharing our stories, by opening up the lines of communication that have been shut for too long." Jake smiled slightly, his earlier defiance softening. "Yeah, we can make our own legends, ones that don't end in betrayal." As the weight of our shared history lingered in the air, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Perhaps, against all odds, we could cultivate not just the land, but the connections that had been lost. The winter was creeping in, the chill settling over Winbrook like a heavy blanket, stifling the last remnants of life in my fields. As I stood on my porch, I could feel the weight of the town's despair pressing down on my shoulders. The thought of losing my family farm, the land that had been in my family for generations, was unbearable. I needed to do something to ignite hope, not just for myself, for the entire community. "Maybe we need to bring the people together," I mumbled to myself, pacing back and forth. The idea of organizing an agricultural fair bubbled up within me, a flicker of possibility amidst the darkness. I imagined vendors displaying their goods, families laughing, children running through the fields. It could be a revival of our community spirit, a way to remind everyone of our shared roots. A soft voice broke through my reverie. "What are you thinking about, Hank?" Dara Carter, the daughter of the family I had helped, stood at the edge of my yard, her hands tucked into the pockets of her worn jacket. Her presence was like a breath of fresh air, and I found myself smiling at her eagerness. I'm thinking about an agricultural fair, I replied, trying to contain my excitement. We could invite everyone, showcase our produce, and remind ourselves of the strength we have as a community. Eyes sparkled with interest. That's a great idea. We could even have contests. Biggest pumpkin, best pie. Everyone loves a little competition. Exactly. It'll bring everyone together, I said, feeling the energy shift around us. If we can get enough people involved, maybe it will rekindle that sense of unity we all seem to have lost. As we brainstormed, the plans began to take shape. Sarah was a natural, her creativity flowing effortlessly. What if we have a section for local crafts? We could encourage people to bring their homemade goods, she suggested, her enthusiasm contagious. I nodded, inspired by her ideas. And we could have some local musicians play. Nothing brings people together like music, I added. I could almost hear the laughter and chatter, the sound of feet dancing in the dirt. The next day, we set out to spread the word. I knocked on doors, my heart racing with each invitation I extended. We're planning a fair, a chance for everyone to come together and celebrate what we have, claimed, trying to inject a sense of urgency into my words. Most of the townsfolk were hesitant at first, their faces lined with worry. But as I spoke, I saw flickers of hope emerge. Sarah and I worked tirelessly, hanging posters in the local diner, the post office, and even at the school. Each time we talked to someone, we could feel the community slowly awakening. We're doing this, Hank, she said one afternoon, her eyes gleaming with determination. This is going to be our moment. The day of the fair arrived, and I stood at the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. The sun shone brightly, illuminating the fields that had long seemed lifeless. As families began to trickle in, laughter and chatter filled the air, weaving a tapestry of sound that I had almost forgotten existed. I watched as old friends reunited, children ran with abandon, and the essence of Winbrook began to breathe again. Look at them, Hank, Sarah said, standing beside me. This is exactly what we needed. I can hardly believe it, I replied, a smile spreading across my face. It's like we've all been waiting for this moment. As the fair unfolded, I felt a warmth spreading through me, igniting a flame of hope that had flickered for far too long. We had set up booths showcasing fresh produce, homemade jams, and craft. The smell of baked goods wafted through the air, drawing people in like bees to honey. Come on, Hank, let's get those old folks to dance. Jake, Sarah's brother, called out, pulling me toward the makeshift stage. I chuckled, watching as he encouraged a group of elderly men and women to join him in an impromptu dance. Their laughter rang out, infectious and pure. Who knew Jake had it in him? I said, shaking my head in disbelief. It's full of surprises, Sarah replied with a grin. Just like the rest of us. As the day wore on, I stood back, taking it all in. The joy, community spirit, renewed sense of purpose, it's all right there in front of me. We had come together, united by our love for this land and each other. It was a reminder that despite the trials we faced, there was still strength in our roots. A strength I had almost forgotten existed. I think we might just pull this off, Sarah said, feeling the warmth of hope enveloping. Together, Hank, we can do this together, she replied, her smile illuminating the fading light of the day. And in that moment, I knew we were on the brink of something greater than a fair. It was a revival of our community, a testament to the resilience of our spirits, and a promise of new beginning. As days turned into weeks, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on my chest. I was standing at the edge of my field, the barren earth stretched out before me like a defeated soldier. The winter chill hung in the air, but it was the thought of my dwindling options that froze my heart. Just as I was about to turn back to the house, black SUV rolled up the gravel road, picking up dust that settled like a shroud over my dreams. The driver emerged, a sharp-suited man with slicked-back hair and a confident stride. He approached me with a smile that felt as false as the warmth of the sun that barely peeked through the clouds. Mr. Thompson, I presume, said, extending his hand. I'm David Ellis, a developer with Ellis Realty. We've been watching your property closely, and I think we can help each other. I shook his hand reluctantly. Help each other? How's that? He gestured toward my land, his eyes glinting with ambition. Your property has tremendous potential. With a little investment, we could transform this area into a residential paradise. You'd be surprised at how much I'm willing to offer for your land." I felt my stomach twist. "And what would you do with it? Turn it into another cookie-cutter neighborhood? This is my family's land. It's not just dirt and crops." David chuckled, unfazed. "I understand your attachment, but think of the money. To pay off your debts, live comfortably. It's a win-win situation." "Win-win?" I snapped. "It sounds more like a win-lose. I'm not interested in selling." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Let's be honest, Hank. You're struggling. Town is struggling. This could breathe new life into Winbrook." That's when I saw Ellen and her children approaching from a distance, their figures silhouetted against the soft glow of the setting sun. I could feel David's gaze shift to them, calculating glint in his eyes. "And what about them? They're just campers after all." "Just campers?" I replied, my voice rising. "They're part of this community now. You don't know anything about them or the history we're beginning to share." David smirked. "History? You think a few weeks with the Carters can change anything? The world is moving forward, Hank. You need to adapt or get left behind." Ellen reached us just in time to hear the last part of our conversation. She stood straight, her expression fierce and unyielding. "What's going on?" "Just a business discussion," David said smoothly, flashing her a disarming smile. "I was explaining to Hank how lucrative it could be to sell his property." Ellen's brow furrowed. "You think this land is just a commodity? It's more than that. It's our home." I could see the tension rising in her shoulders, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her presence. "Exactly," he said, feeling a newfound determination. "This land holds our history. Our family's stories are intertwined with every inch of it." David's smile faltered for a moment, and he shifted his approach. "Look, I understand you're passionate, but you have to think practically. The world is changing. Holding on to this land might not be your best option." Ellen stepped forward, her voice steady. "You think we'll just roll over and let you take our home for profit? This town deserves better than to be bulldozed for more houses. We'll fight for our roots, for our future." David raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her defiance. "You really want to take a stand against progress?" I could feel my heart racing. "Progress? You mean destruction. We're not going to let you take what's ours without a fight." "Suit yourselves," he said, a hint of annoyance creeping into his tone. "But remember, every day you delay is another day the offer might vanish. You'll regret it." As he turned to leave, I felt a weight lift slightly. Ellen's eyes met mine, and in that moment, I understood we were in this together. The stakes had never been higher, but I knew that if we stood united, we could protect our home and our future. The threat of losing everything seemed overwhelming, but the strength of our newfound bond ignited a flicker of hope within me. The day of the fair arrived like a breath of fresh air, filling Winbrook with a sense of hope I hadn't felt in ages. I stood at the entrance of the fairground, my heart racing as I looked around at the bustling activity. The smell of freshly baked pies wafted through the air, mixing with the scent of hay and the earthy aroma of the crops we had worked so hard to revive. Colorful banners flapped in the gentle breeze, and laughter bubbled from clusters of families and friends. It was as if the town had come alive again. "Hey Hank, you ready for this?" Sarah's voice broke through my thoughts. She approached with a bright smile, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, streaks of dirt on her cheeks from her work in the garden. She was a whirlwind of energy, and I couldn't help but feel inspired by her enthusiasm. "More than ready, Sarah. I just hope everyone shows up," I replied, trying to suppress my apprehension. I had poured my heart into organizing this event, and the last thing I wanted was for it to be a flop. "Oh, they will," she assured me, confidence infectious. "Did you see how many flyers we put up? People are talking about it. They want to come together." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope igniting within me. The fair wasn't just an event. It was a chance for our community to reconnect, remember what we stood for. I glanced around, taking in the makeshift stalls where neighbors were showcasing their crafts and produce. Old friends were reuniting, and the sound of children's laughter rang out like music, filling the air with warmth. "Let's do this," I said, clapping my hands together. "We need to get the main stage set up for the opening ceremony." As we hurried to the stage, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. I was determined to make this fair a celebration of unity and resilience. a reminder of what we could achieve when we worked together. Once the stage was ready, I took a moment to step back and breathe. The crowd was growing, and I could see familiar faces, those who had once been my friends, my neighbors, now standing together, united by a common goal. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, grabbing the microphone as I stood on the stage, my heart pounding. The chatter quieted, and all eyes turned to me. "Thank you all for being here today. This fair is not just about celebrating our harvest, it's about celebrating each other, our roots, and the strength of our community." A round of applause broke out, and I felt a swell of pride. Continued. "We face challenges, but together we can overcome anything. Let's remember the stories of those who came before us, those who toiled on this land, and let's honor their legacy by standing together." As I spoke, I noticed Jake stepping onto the stage, a guitar slung over his shoulder. The crowd murmured with curiosity, and I smiled, welcoming him. "Looks like we have a surprise performance," I said, encouraging him to take the spotlight. Jake grinned, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "I thought I'd throw in a little something to get everyone in the spirit," he said, strumming his guitar. First notes rang out, and the crowd quieted, captivated. His voice filled the air, raw and powerful, as he sang a song about love, loss, and the enduring spirit of Winbrook. I could see the way the music resonated with everyone, their faces lighting up with memories and emotions. It was a moment of connection, shared history, and I felt the weight of our struggles lifting, if only for a little while. As Jake finished his song, the applause erupted, and I could see the joy in everyone's faces. "That was incredible, Jake," I cheered, feeling a sense of camaraderie building among us. "Thanks, Hank. I just wanted to remind everyone that we're in this together," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "I think you did just that," I replied, clapping him on the back. With spirits high, I turned to Sarah, who was beaming. "This is it, Hank. We're making a difference," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. And in that moment, amidst the laughter, the music, and the shared stories, I realized that we weren't just surviving. We were thriving, weaving our past into a brighter future. The fair had become more than an event. It was a beacon of hope, testament to the resilience of our community, and a celebration of the roots we all shared. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over Winbrook as I stood behind a makeshift booth at the agricultural fair. The air was thick with the aroma of freshly baked pies and roasted corn, and laughter echoed all around me. I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride at what we had accomplished. This fair wasn't just about selling goods. It was a celebration of our community, our roots, and our collective resilience. But as I glanced around, a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. I knew we were still being watched, and the looming threat of the developer hung over us like a dark cloud. Suddenly, I spotted him. The developer, Mark Harris, was striding through the fairgrounds with an air of confidence that made my skin crawl. He was a slick man in a crisp suit, far too polished for the rustic charm of Winbrook. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. How could he come here, to our sacred space, and try to undermine everything we had worked so hard to build? "Hey, Hank," Sarah said, voice cutting through my thoughts. She stood beside me, her eyes narrowing as she caught sight of Harris. "Do you think he's here to make trouble?" I nodded, my jaw clenched. It wouldn't surprise me. He thinks he can swoop in and buy us out like we're nothing. But we're more than just land to him. "Let's show him," she said, determination lighting her face. "We can't let him ruin this." As Sarah and I exchanged looks of solidarity, I felt a surge of hope. The fair had united us, and we had to protect that unity. Just then, Jake took the stage, a guitar slung over his shoulder. The crowd quieted, and I could see the tension in the air. The moment felt charged, like the calm before a storm. "Hey everyone," Jake called out, his voice ringing clear. "Let's take a moment to remember why we're here today. This fair isn't just about selling our produce. It's about coming together, fighting for what we believe in, and standing up for our home." The crowd cheered, and I felt a swell of pride. Jake was right. We had to stand together, not just against Harris, but for the future of Windmere. But just as I began to relax, Harris stepped forward, a smirk plastered on his face. "Isn't this quaint?" he interjected, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But let's be honest, folks. This land isn't going to save you. I can offer you a way out. Money, security. Why cling to the past when you could have a future? The murmurs of the crowd grew louder. I could see doubt creeping into some faces. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders. "Mark," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "This land is more than just a plot to us. It holds our history, our memories, and our community. Selling it would mean selling ourselves." He raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "But what do you have to show for it? Look around you. The place is falling apart. I'm offering a lifeline." "Your lifeline is a noose," Jake shot back, stepping forward. "You don't understand what this land means to us. It's not just dirt. It's where our families grew up, where our stories were written. We're not going to let you take that away." The crowd erupted into applause, and I could feel the energy shift. Harris's expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "You think this is just about land? This is about progress. You can't hold on to the past. You'll get left behind. Maybe progress isn't what we need." Sarah countered, her voice rising above the chatter. "Maybe we need to strengthen our community, not tear it apart." I could see the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had ignited in all of us. The fair was more than just a gathering, it was a testament to our resolve. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "What we need is to stand united. We fought too hard to let someone like you tear us apart. We won't be bought." As I spoke, I could see the resolve harden in the faces of my neighbors. We were all in this together, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed we could actually win. Harris's confident facade began to crack, and I realized that our strength lay not just in our land, but in our unity. The fair had transformed from a simple event into a powerful statement of resilience, and I was damn proud to be a part of it. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the fields, but the chill in the air was unmistakable. I stood by the old wooden fence, my mind racing, replaying the day's events like a broken record. Ellen approached me cautiously, footsteps crunching on the gravel path. I could see the weight of her thoughts etched on her face. "Hank," she began softly, a voice barely above a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you." I turned to face her, my heart pounding. "What is it, Ellen? If it's about the developer, No, it's not about that," she interrupted, her eyes searching mine. "It's about our families, our pasts. There's something you don't know." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What do you mean? What's there to know?" Ellen took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to the ground. "My ancestors, they were forced to sell their land many years ago. They were betrayed by someone from your family, Hank. It was a conflict that tore us apart." I stood frozen, the world around me fading into a blur. Betrayed? By whom? I could barely form the words, the implications crashing over me like a wave. "Your great-grandfather," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her eyes. "He had a dispute with my family over the land. Instead of finding a way to resolve it, he used his influence to force us out. We lost everything. It's why we ended up wandering, why we've been searching for a place we could call home." I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet. "I had no idea," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "I never knew, never imagined." "Neither did I," Ellen continued, her voice trembling slightly. "When I first learned about it, it felt like a shadow had been cast over my entire life. Every time I looked at this land, it was a reminder of what we lost." I swallowed hard, the weight of her revelation pressing down on me. "How can we fix this? How can we make it right?" Ellen looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "We can't change the past, Hank, but we can choose how we move forward. We can break the cycle of betrayal and resentment. We can choose to unite our families instead of letting history repeat itself." "Unite?" I echoed, the word hanging heavily in the air. "But how? The damage is done. Your family lost everything because of mine." "Maybe," she said, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "But it doesn't have to end there. Our families have been intertwined for generations. We can find a way to heal those wounds." I looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, but all I found was a fierce resolve. "You really believe that?" "I have to believe it," she replied, her voice steady now. "If we don't try, then what's the point? We can either let our past dictate our future, or we can forge a new path together." I let her words sink in, the reality of our shared history swirling in my mind. "What do you suggest we do?" She smiled softly, glimmer of hope breaking through the tension. "We start by sharing our stories, Hank. Let the community know what happened, not just the pain, but also the chance for reconciliation. We can help them see that this is bigger than just our families. It's about the future of Winbrook." I nodded, feeling a flicker of determination ignite within me. "You're right. If we can show them that we can overcome this, maybe they'll see that we're not so different after all." Ellen reached out, placing a hand on my arm. "Together, we can be the change we wish to see. It won't be easy, but I believe we owe it to our families to try." The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving us in a soft twilight, and in that moment, I realized that perhaps this was the beginning of something new. A chance to rewrite the narrative of our families, to cultivate not just the land, but the bonds between us. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift just a little, replaced by the promise of what could be. "Let's do it, Ellen. Together." As the day of the vote dawned, I could feel the weight of generations pressing down on me, heavy and suffocating. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the town square of Winbrook, where the community had gathered. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that mirrored my own racing heartbeat. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching familiar faces, some hopeful, others uncertain, all of us caught in this pivotal moment. I glanced at Sarah, her expression a mix of determination and fear. "Do you think they'll really vote to keep the farm?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might jinx our chances. "I don't know, Sarah," I replied, trying to project confidence that I didn't quite feel. "But I know we have to give them a reason to believe." As the meeting began, I took a deep breath, attempting to steady my nerves. The townsfolk settled into their seats, their murmurs fading into an anxious silence. I could see Jake at the back, leaning against a post, arms crossed, his usual bravado replaced by a seriousness that made me proud. The mayor stood up, his voice booming. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather to decide the fate of our community, the fate of our land. This isn't just about Hank's farm, it's about all of us." His words hung in the air, and I could see the flicker of doubt in some eyes. Would they remember the warmth of our shared moments at the fair? Would the spirit of unity we had built be enough to overshadow the allure of the developer's tempting offer? I felt a nudge at my side and turned to see Ellen standing there, her eyes shining with silent strength. "You can do this, Hank," she encouraged, squeezing my hand. "Speak from your heart." As the crowd shifted, I knew it was my turn to address them. I stepped forward, the wooden floor creaking beneath my feet. The sight of the familiar faces staring back at me filled me with a mix of dread and resolve. I cleared my throat, feeling the weight of their expectations. "Thank you all for being here today," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I stand before you, not just as a farmer, but as a member of this community, a community that has weathered storms together, both in the fields and in our lives." I paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. This land, this farm, holds more than just crops. It holds our history, our families, our stories. My grandfather used to say, "We are not just the caretakers of this land, we are its guardians." And I believe that deeply. I could see some nodding in agreement, and it gave me the courage to continue. Selling this farm to a developer may offer a quick fix to my problems, but it would be a long-term loss for all of us. Once that land is gone, it will never come back. We'd lose not only our heritage, but the very roots that connect us. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and I pressed on, feeling the fire ignite inside me. Think about the fair we held last week. Do you remember how it felt to see neighbors come together to share laughter and stories? That's what this land represents. Our community. Future. We can't let someone take that away from us. At that moment, I spotted Jake stepping forward, his youthful confidence shining through. My dad always said that land isn't just dirt and grass. It's where our memories are made. We've played on this land, we've cried on it, and we've grown together. We can't let money decide our fate. The crowd erupted in applause, and the energy shifted. I felt the warmth of hope spreading through me, filling the spaces left vacant by doubt. "Today we have a choice," I said, my voice rising with conviction. We can choose to protect our heritage, to stand together as a community, or we can let greed tear us apart. I believe in this town. I believe in our strength. Let's vote not just for a piece of land, but for our future. The applause grew louder, echoing in my chest like a heartbeat. I could see the resolve in their eyes, the understanding that we were on the brink of something monumental. As we moved toward the voting booths, I felt a rush of gratitude. No matter the outcome, we had united in ways I never thought possible. And in that moment, I knew that whatever happened next, we had already won something far more valuable than a vote. We had found our roots, intertwined in hope and resilience, ready to face whatever came next together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the sprawling fields, I felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Ellen and I had been going through her family's belongings, remnants of a past neither of us fully understood. It was then that we stumbled upon an old, leather-bound diary, spine cracked with age. I could feel my heart race as the weight of its significance settled over us. "Do you think we should read it?" I asked, my voice a mere whisper, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile moment we were in. Ellen glanced up, her green eyes reflecting the fading light. "I think we have to. There are answers about our families, about what happened between them. It could change everything." With trembling fingers, I opened the diary, the musty scent of aged paper wafting up to greet us. The first entry was dated over a century ago, penned by Ellen's great-great-grandfather. The elegant cursive told of a time when our families were not adversaries but allies, bound by shared dreams and hopes for the land. "Listen to this," I said, my heart pounding as I read aloud. "The Thompsons and the Carters have united their farms, growing not just crops, but a bond that has flourished through the years. Together, we shall face whatever storms come our way." Paused, a lump forming in my throat. They were friends, Ellen. They wanted to work together. Ellen leaned closer, her breath hitching as she read the next passage. "But I fear a darkness is upon us. There are whispers of betrayal, fracture that may come to pass. I pray it does not reach our children." She looked at me, her eyes wide with realization. "This is it, Hank. This is why we've been drawn to each other. Our families were meant to be united, not divided." I took a deep breath, the weight of the past pressing down on my shoulders. But how did it all go so wrong? What happened? As we continued to read, the diary revealed a tale of jealousy and greed. Conflict that erupted between our ancestors over land disputes and misunderstandings. It spoke of one ancestor betraying the trust of the other, leading to a forced sale of land and a rift that echoed through generations. "This is heartbreaking," I murmured, feeling the sting of tears welling in my eyes. "All this time, we've been carrying the weight of their mistakes." Ellen nodded, tears streaming down her cheek. "But it doesn't have to be this way for us. We can break the cycle, Hank. We can choose unity over division." I looked into her eyes, feeling a fierce determination rising within me. "You're right. We owe it to them, and to ourselves, to heal this rift. We need to show our community that we can come together, that our families can be united once more." As we closed the diary, the enormity of our discovery settled over us like a warm blanket. The past no longer felt like a burden, it was a call to action. We needed to share this with everyone, to make them understand that the path to healing lay in acknowledging our shared history. That evening, we gathered the community at my farm, the air thick with anticipation. As the townsfolk trickled in, I could see the curiosity on their faces, mingled with a hint of apprehension. "Everyone, thank you for coming," I began, my voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Ellen and I have discovered something remarkable about our family's past. We found an old diary that reveals the truth. Our ancestors were once friends, united by their love for this land." A murmur spread through the crowd, eyebrows raised in disbelief. Ellen stepped forward, her voice resonating with passion. "They dreamed of a future where our families worked together, not apart. They wanted to build something beautiful, and we have the chance to fulfill that dream." Jake, standing at the edge of the crowd, raised his hand. "So, what are we supposed to do? Just forget the past?" "No," I replied, my heart racing. "We honor the past by learning from it. We can't let the mistakes of our ancestors define us. This is our opportunity to unite, to create a new legacy. We've faced challenges before, and together we can overcome this one too. Crowd began to buzz with energy, faces lighting up with hope. Let's rebuild what was lost. Someone called out, let's make this community stronger. As the night wore on, laughter and chatter filled the air, tension that had once hung over us dissipating like morning fog. We embraced each other, sharing stories, dreams, and plans for the future. In that moment, I realized that our families were no longer just intertwined by history, but by a shared vision for what could be. As we stood together, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The future was bright, and as we celebrated the newfound bond between us, I knew that we were planting the seeds for a new beginning, one where hope, unity, and understanding would flourish. So, what happens when a lie starts feeling a little too real? Jake thought he had it all under control, but is he about to lose more than just his company? And Lily, is she about to find out her dreams are closer than she thinks? Don't miss the secrets and the sparks flying in the next video. Click on the link that's about to pop up on your screen and find out just how far Jake and Lily are willing to go. Protect what really matters.